right. All right. We are back. It is, oh, wow. It is Monday. It is a Monday. Well, the last Monday of January 2025. And it just feels like time keeps on slipping. Welcome to the HEF podcast. That's the podcast of the Home Education Foundation. The Home Education Foundation was an organization started by Brenda Dickinson back in the 90s to help protect parents' rights in education. Our aim is to protect as much of the parents' direction for parent-directed education options, school choice options. The most, I guess, pinnacle form of that being the freedom to educate your children yourself and do it without interference by others. We call that home education. Brenda helped put the home education bill together and worked with Representative Webster to get that bill pushed through, and eventually it was signed into law, and now we have home education law. And we continue to push all of those ideas that legislators have that they think are great ideas, and we vet them and sometimes discuss and argue and talk about important things. And we're here hopeful and bright that we can continue to guard parents' rights. We believe that family is the foundation for our whole society, and that it's from that our children derive their stability and their success as they move forward in life. All right. Well, first, we want to thank our top sponsors. Thank you to Arete and Fisher Precious Metals for being with us as top sponsors. We're very appreciative of that. And thank you to all of our recognition wall businesses who join us. We actually had a new one that jumped recently. We're very excited to have them on board. They work with parents who are children with unique abilities and helping them determine and diagnose what those are. And that it's a blessing to always have all of our supporters with us, and then also especially those families. Excuse me, those families that join us arm in arm with their donations every single month. We love it, appreciate you as well. And now that all the thank yous are out of the way, Brenda, how are you? How are you today?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Starting another exciting week in the Capitol.
Yes, it's going to be very exciting. It's interesting. I was looking for a truck, just like an El Cheapo, on Facebook Marketplace, and I saw someone nearby was selling one, so I started talking to them, and as it turns out, she's an advocate, a healthcare advocate, and she's going to the Capitol on Tuesday. And I was like, maybe you just run into that here in Tallahassee. Maybe that's just the way it is.
That's right.
But it threw me for a loop. I was like, whoa. And we had an interesting, we didn't just talk about the vehicle. We were actually talking about the importance of families. We got off on a philosophical conversation about the importance of families and how that's kind of eroded over time. And she was very hopeful that our generation would kind of help bring family back front and center and put that into focus and restore parents at the top and parents' rights. And I was like, wow, small world. How cool. But then other things happened that were disappointing and some that were exciting. It snowed. That's pretty crazy. I think you were hunkered down for a while. We had 3 inches of snow?
I don't know how deep it was here, but we still have snow on the ground. Well, actually, It's probably white ice, but
a little pocket.
Yeah. Well, my side yard is in the shade, so yesterday it was still a white blanket.
Oh wow! Yeah. Well, you also don't have children running around.
I had to pour hot water on my windshield to break up the ice enough to drive my car on Friday night. It was really thick and hard. I thought, wow, I'm glad I don't have to put up with this all winter. I like Florida.
Yeah. Well, a special thanks to Amazon. We actually had some boxes that larger things had arrived in, and so we duct taped the bottoms of the boxes and sent the kids down some of the hills, and they were spinning
They
out
make
and
great
sliding.
sleds, yeah. As long as you duct tape the bottom so that it doesn't get wet and soggy.
Yep, they actually did. Little makeshift Florida sleds. Who knew? Oh man. But yeah, our kids made snowmen, and yeah, it was pretty crazy. Michelle Wilson says, I'm in extreme Northwest Florida, and we got 9 inches. Oh my word.
That's
Oh
crazy.
wow. Yeah, we might have to post some of our pictures. I don't know. I feel like you guys probably don't want to be bored by seeing all of that, but it was glorious. It was really cool. I couldn't believe it. It felt like a once in a lifetime kind of thing you're going to be able to see. So,
And of course, being good homeschoolers, you went into the weather and figured out why we got snow in Florida. And really, the kids were so interested. How did that happen? Is it going to happen again?
Yeah, we
That's
did.
right.
Actually,
Yeah.
Rob Nucatola, I think is how you say his name. He's a local weather guy here in Tallahassee. He posted this really cool graphic
Yeah.
explaining the conditions needed to make sleet versus rain versus snow. So I showed it to the kids and we talked about it and the odds of actually getting snow that night. And it was a very educational experience for them.
Mm-hmm.
We studied hurricanes as the tornadoes were going by on either side. You could hear them roaring. This was when my kids were little. They were very interested in that unit study.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so funny. Well, that's some of the good. Let's move on to work. Let's get to work. Enough play.
I thought that was part of work. Aren't we going to tell your story?
Yes, well, we can blend it together. Oh, that's a great segue into the Tell Your Story project. Brenda, that's brilliant. Thank you. Yeah. So, yeah, home education looks and homeschooling looks different for everybody, and there's a very real need for this project. We started this project a while back. And we've been really trying to focus on getting the awareness for it. I know that it makes a lot of families uncomfortable because some people just don't like being on camera. All the people on TikTok love being on camera, unfortunately. But like some people don't like being on camera. And then some people just don't want anybody knowing what their business is. But the challenge is that the media is very happy to script a narrative of these doggone homeschoolers and how they're ruining everything. And then, of course, with the scholarship, how they're taking money and blowing it on all these weird things that no one should be doing, blah, blah, blah. We're going to look at one of those articles today, but it's really beautiful to watch all the different angles that parents come at life from. We have a mother in our little homeschool community, who's an absolute brilliant musician. And she teaches her kids the music, and one of them struggling with math, and I was like, well, music is math, like in a lot of ways, and there's just so many unique ways to bridge the subjects together and blend them into each other and have one lead to another and follow each of your students, your children's passions in their own way. And we would really love to have some samples of that we can use to share with legislators and share with other advocacy groups, other lobbyists who are out there interested in projects that are adjacent to ours. Maybe they aren't exactly interested in what we are, but sometimes they can be an echoing voice if they have the right kind of thing to share. And so the James Madison Institute's a great example. They've offered to share our project, and they have, and we really appreciate that. But there's a very real need for the voices that tell these stories to be actual parents. We're not trying to write commercials and then have a disclaimer at the bottom that, these are paid actors or anything like that. We want the genuine article. We want actual parents. What you do, just very briefly, it's very simple, under 60 seconds. They don't have to be long. These are not documentaries. Just a very basic 5 seconds to introduce your family. 15 seconds to talk about maybe a little bit about your unique approach. Maybe another 15 seconds to talk about, how your freedoms and choices have led you to a solution that works for you and your children, or how you've kind of experimented with different options using those freedoms. And then whether you use the scholarship or not, sometimes for some of these families that I've talked to, they come to me and they're so thankful that they're able to do an experiment with some of these additional opportunities. And some people want to stay away from the money, and they have their kind of tried and true home education tracks that they're on. And, let's talk about both. Let's show both, and let's let them see what it actually looks like. And then maybe a little 10 seconds at the very end where you just talk about how it's impacted you, like how it's impacted your children, the kind of changes that you've seen come from that choice that you've made, and how you appreciate it. And then there's a very easy spot right here to upload them on the website. And then there's a couple of samples here. And, I would love to have, there's 155,000 home education students in Florida. And I would love to have just 100 videos even. Give it to your children as a project. Make it, give them school credit for it. They have to write their thesis or what it is that's important to them, and then write some supporting details, and then go take a camera and shoot it. And what a cool project to do. You can do it as a home education credit. So even that's fun. Brenda, do you want to add, or Crystal?
Well, I think what we forget, because we live sort of in a bubble in the home education community, we think everybody knows what home education is, because we all know what it is and we live in that world. But I find it very frustrating, to say the least, that there's still people out there who have no idea what home education is and don't think parents should have the right to do that. Right. And a lot of people go, well, let's go hide in the closet. We don't want anybody to know we're doing this. We don't want to run into any trouble. Sure. But the contrary is really what keeps us free. The more of us are out there waving the flag that home education is the best thing for our family, we reach critical mass. And at some point, they think, oh my goodness, we don't want to tangle with those homeschoolers, because they'll be after us and, bombing our, that's the wrong word. Bombarding is what I was trying to say, our doors and phones and everything to, to let us know what their positions are. We don't have to be that strong. We need a few. And a long time ago, I was listening to a federal congressman, and he was talking about how parents can influence legislation. And I said, can you tell us how many letters or phone calls from your constituents that would change your opinion on a piece of legislation? He said, well, if it's a moral value, they're not going to change my position on it. But if I get 2 or 3 letters or phone calls, now this is at the federal level, it could influence the way I vote on a bill. So parents don't realize how important their voice is and what changes can be made if we just get a few people to stand up, to contact their legislators and let them know that. Let's take the article that was in the Palm Beach Post last week. Okay, so they have a platform. They control the media. But we can also make great influences by calling those Palm Beach legislators. And even if you just talk to staff, say the information is incorrect, it's misinformation. When they're talking about, parents are using these scholarships to buy, as Crystal said, a trampoline. Well, it was an individual trampoline for a student with disabilities, and movement makes a lot of difference in the way their brain functions. And it was not the vast majority. It's an isolated case where a child needed something to improve his educational learning ability. So it's, they take these one example, and I want to point out a student. I was going to use his name, but I think I'll just go unknown. A student who was not ever supposed to be able to walk or talk, and the mother quit a corporate job to stay home and work with this child. And as a high schooler, the child was able to get with a yacht club in, I believe it was Fort Lauderdale, and convince them. Now, this is a child that's not ever supposed to be able to function outside of a vegetable state. Convince them that sailing was one of the things he had a lifelong dream of doing. And not only did they let him join the club and sail, but they created a group for students who had that kind of disability. And so they're making differences in the world, and it may not seem to the media that it's a good use of, I don't even know if they could have used their funds for it, but if they do use the funds for those kinds of things, a trip to bush gardens where they're exposed to animals may turn into a person that wants to go into zoology or animal care.
I worked as an animal trainer at a live animal show at Busch Gardens as my job full time. I was assistant manager there for a couple years. My love of working with animals came from seeing an animal show when I was very little at Busch Gardens. And over the years, I did zoology behind the scenes thing through my school there. There are so many opportunities that are legitimate educational opportunities. I shadowed a vet there at Busch Gardens for 2 weeks. It's just the perception in the media.
Yeah.
And I just want to reiterate this. In the absence of actual parent stories, home education stories, the media is still talking about home education, but they're only giving one side. They're only giving the side that is painting it in a negative light, casting all kind of doubt on whether parents should be given the freedoms to make those choices. And unless we balance that with the opposite stories, that is all the legislation, that's all they're going to see. That's all the public is going to see, is the other side of the story that the media is pushing. Yeah,
absolutely. I want to go back to what you said about the Busch Gardens thing, when you worked there. I remember when you worked there, and after every single show, unless weather didn't permit, you guys did interactive Q&As with the members of the audience, and there were people who came to each show. Like, they just hung around.
Yeah, we had like groupies. They wanted to hang out with the animals and learn more about them. It was,
and they ask about the animals. They really dive in and they're interested, and that's typically how home education families make use of things. Is we let our kids pursue the things they're interested in. They want to go and sit in front of that animal show all day long and watch the animals like really, really closely and dive in. That's what they can do. And they
learn about animal behavior. They learn about what the animals eat, what kind of environment they live in.
But it's low-hanging fruit. It's easy to punch down on those families and go, oh, they're just trying to go get a theme park experience on taxpayers. If you look at the line here, the opinion by this gentleman who wrote this
article made me so irritated.
It's so frustrating because it's borderline lies from the get-go. Let's just take a look. Like right in the title, we'll come back to the word voucher, but right in the title is the word voucher. But the subtitle is, if you're going to siphon off my tax dollars that ought to be going to traditional public schools, at least come up with a good excuse. Well, they're not your tax dollars, sir.
Yeah, right there in that opening statement, there is like 2 or 3 things going on.
Yeah.
These were never funds that were part of the school district funds. They are fundraised separately by the scholarship funding organizations. Like there's just several things happening even in that first sentence.
Well, let me clarify. The PEP scholarship is privately funded.
That's true.
The UA scholarship does come out of the big educational budget, but
that's true.
People don't tend to attack kids with disabilities. Over the years, that's kind of been something that they stay away from. But here, this guy in the article is openly attacking parents who have used this for their kids with disabilities.
Yes, well, he never once mentions disabilities in here. He's lumping them all together, kind of. He mentions private school, and he mentions home education. He never once mentions disabilities, which makes me think he's mostly aiming at PEP, or maybe he doesn't understand that there are separate programs.
But I'm not even in the article yet. I'm in the title and the subtitle, and I'm
just
already
in
infuriated.
The tagline.
This word voucher that keeps coming up and being slung around irritates the snot out of me because it's used everywhere in many other states. Many other states do have voucher programs. They do. We don't. We don't actually have a voucher program. So what is a voucher, and why is that important to make that distinction? So here's the definition from Google. Good old Google. Thank you for coming through. It's a small printed piece of paper that entitles the holder to a discount or that may be exchanged for goods or services. Merriam-Webster comes over here and says it's a form of checking and indicating credit. It's a piece of supporting evidence. In another use, a documentary record of a business transaction or a coupon issued by government to a parent or guardian to be used to fund child's education in either public or private school. But it's not being exchanged for, it's not a coupon, it's being exchanged for this item. So here's the coupon and go exchange it for said thing that's an approved thing. This is a scholarship. 1002.395, the PEP scholarship, is a scholarship that is funds placed into an educational savings account that the parent may judiciously use for their child's educational benefit, period. If you look at 1002.395 at the beginning of it, they set the intent of this entire program out in the open, and it's to ensure that all parents, regardless of means, may exercise and enjoy their basic right to educate their children as they see fit. And this is a valid purpose that the legislature may promote using its sovereign power to determine subjects of taxation and exemptions from taxation. And the PEP scholarship in and of itself is an exemption from taxation for corporations that donate into the 501c3. And then that money goes to fund the educational savings accounts. This is not a voucher program. This isn't taking taxpayer dollars out of my pocket even. I pay my taxes and they go to fund the public school system, right? But this is a very specifically a different thing. And it's being mischaracterized right from the very, very beginning. We haven't even gotten to the article and it's being mischaracterized. That's how irritating this stuff is to me. Crystal, you wanted to talk a little bit about the article.
Yeah, I don't know that we need to read the whole thing. Okay. But just if you scroll down through it, he basically progresses from basically blaming the scholarships. He continues to call them voucher programs, stripping money from the public schools, that we're the reason that the whole public school system is dismantling, essentially. And that 70% of Florida kids getting voucher money have never even been educated in a public school, as though that matters. And then he's saying, I don't know who he's quoting, some kind of report from the Florida Policy Institute, but he says vouchers are a contributing factor in Florida's school closures, have a negative effect on academic outcomes for recipients, and especially in the case of universal expansion, are awarded to children who were never in public schools. So just that little citation from the Florida Policy Institute report has several other things to address. Negative effect on academic outcomes. How are they measuring that? How are they? Because everything that I've seen would indicate the opposite, right? So I have a lot of questions about that report, first of all. But then as he goes down and attacks the actual scholarship usage, homeschooled students spend taxpayer dollars on flat screen TVs and Disney World trips. And he goes through, he talks about trampolines for your backyard, which is not even a thing. In the purchasing guide for Step Up, they're very clear that it's only individual exercise trampolines, which is a legitimate exercise use, but they're not paying for the recreational big ones in the backyard ever. It's not allowed. And then he goes on, like, you can outfit your home with all sorts of recreational equipment and call it homeschool enrichment program. And you can basically, he's not being subtle about his
No.
accusation that Florida parents are basically like just creative writing, he calls it, these educational benefit forms, like anything you can think of that you can twist to make it seem educational. And he lists paddleboard, musical instruments, stuffed animals, the Nintendo Wii, internet service, a ping pong table in the home, and on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
And then he says at the very end, he has this whole sarcastic list. Okay, I'll just show you how it's done. Here are top 10 educational lessons of Disney World. And he gives these very sarcastic examples. Like, it's a mocking tone in the entire article. So I think
I would love to go through and redline the actual factual issues, because it's an opinion article and you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts.
Well, so the facts that jumped out at me, one, are the source of the funds and whether it's actually dismantling the public schools because it's coming out of those budgets. Like Brenda pointed out, some of them do, UA does, but PEP does not, and he doesn't mention disabilities here at all. So giving him the benefit of the doubt, he may not understand that there is more than one funding source, but that's being generous. And then if you continue down through it, the things that he's giving examples of, and he said, did I mention a trampoline for your backyard? That's false, as I said. The educational benefit form does require parents to explain some categories of things. And you can't just make up something ridiculous, like you need to have an educational benefit. But the point is that the parents should have the authority to make those decisions for their children, because what seems crazy to him, like he points out a paddleboard and a 55-inch TV, there are students who need those for various reasons, disabilities or sensory issues, vision issues, or just because you have 5 kids and you need a screen that you can display something on big enough for them all to see. There are legitimate explanations that are not, there is no balance to this article. There is no, here's maybe how they're being used properly. It's all negative, entirely negative, which is why I say, like, in the absence of our voice, this is all that's being said.
Right.
And legislators do get all of this media stuff. Every morning they're provided that by some service. And so, they're reading this. We got to have something else. Somebody that's a good writer needs to call and get the Palm Beach Post to allow them to do a counter article on what home education is.
Yes.
The other phrase.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just on Brenda's point. I would do it, but I feel like because I'm involved with HEF, it's better if somebody else does it.
Preferably somebody that lives in Palm Beach County.
Yes. But the other line in here that really bothered me is where he says, after a bunch of homeschool parents complained that they didn't want to be micromanaged by the state in the kinds of extracurricular activities they offer their children. This, by the way, is referring to HB 1403, because it comes right after he mentions that last year the legislature tried to restrict educational expenses in these voucher programs to core subjects, and then the parents complained. This is the context. He says lawmakers yielded by giving them something bordering on a blank check. Any parent who uses Step Up for Students 55-page purchasing guide, or however long it is now, knows that this is nothing close to a blank check. It is a part-time job to submit all the reimbursements correctly and get everything reimbursed. So even just that statement, I have major issues with. There is no blank check. There is a purchasing guide in place, and this is the issue we ran into with the legislators last year, is that they didn't know that. They didn't realize how many safeguards there already were keeping parents from misusing the funds.
Well, the entire article reads like a person with an opinion that doesn't have very many of the facts. Like, they're just not truly informed about all of the nuanced and actual ways that they're spent. Kim Hannon makes a great point. She says, I would argue that many of the things he listed sorry, it keeps moving around, are truly educational if they're being used in an environment where education is respected and honored. And an argument could also be made that public schools spend taxpayer dollars in much more inappropriate ways than homeschooling families using the PEP scholarship. Katie Lane says absolutely.
Well, let me make a couple of points here.
Go ahead.
Because I worked a long time to try to get legislators to focus on helping kids with disabilities. And I believe that's one of the best accomplishments other than the home education law that I did over the last few years. And thankfully, Andy Gardner heard from us and had a child himself who had, gosh, I can't think of what the word is right at the moment. But he had a child with disabilities. And so he realized that they don't all fit in a mold. And many of the parents that came to the UA scholarship came because their needs were not being met in a public school or a private school. And those were the ones that were so grateful, because a public school can't provide for every individual child, even though IDEA says they're entitled to a free and appropriate public education. But they don't budget for individual children. They budget for the system. And so a school or even a small school district may have a physical therapist. They might have a speech therapist on their payroll. They might have a behavioral therapist, but chances are they don't have those and don't have them in the numbers that they need to serve the children. So kids in the public school are not getting the appropriate matrix to get the money that they need, because they need more money for those kids to be able to provide those services. But those typically go for buildings or, transportation or something that's not related to the child's education. And so a parent who knows that child is better equipped to provide the specific things that most of them working with specialists who are trying to help them move that child forward in the educational progress that they need to make in order to be successful human beings in this world. And so they know specifically what's wrong with them. And so a trampoline for somebody that can't afford a swimming pool is a good way for that child to get that round and around and around thing that goes on in kids with autism, and they can't get off of that merry-go-round to do something else. The exercise is really quite important. So I have a grandnephew with autism, and they've spent probably $100,000 over a period of at least 2 years, maybe less than that per year, $100,000. They have good insurance. Not every parent does. And they use this scholarship for therapies. And he has tutors that come in. He has therapists that come in weekly, spending hours. But you know what he does after all of that? He swims in their pool, and they're blessed to have the resources to be able to allow that. But otherwise, he's circling in the house. If it's a bad day and he can't swim, he's just going round and around and around, repeating the same things over and over and over. If you can't break through and get that child to focus with some sort of exercise that gets him out of that break, you can't teach them anything. They can't focus. Unless somebody's been around a child that has autism, and I was just reading, it's like 1 in 10 kids have some level of autism, 1 out of 10 kids on the spectrum. Something's wrong in our society, and those kids are not being adequately served in a public school. That's why this scholarship is so demanded, actually. When they first put it in, they put a line item in the budget for those kids. And every year they were adding $100,000, or was it $100 million to that scholarship, because parents were demanding the opportunity to work with their kids. So I'm really offended when
Mhm.
somebody that is that uninformed about these scholarship programs writes that kind of accusatory
Yeah.
stuff.
Well,
And let's
it's
say the great job the public schools are doing, how many
Mhm.
of them actually get a diploma? How many of them actually graduate? There are so many kids who can't pass the basic algebra test. And what is the other one? The English literature, not literature, language arts writing. If they can't pass those, they don't get a diploma, but they spend 12 years in a system that has not educated them. And this writer should be very thankful that Florida is not an education state,
Mhm.
because there would be parents suing the public schools, talk about going for the wrong purpose, because
Oh,
their kids did not get a diploma and can't progress beyond where they are and have very little hope for their future. So if parents want to take the initiative and spend 24/7 with that child with disabilities, that parent is committed to the education and progress of that child. So I challenge him, find somebody that has a child with autism and go spend a day with them and see what happens. It will totally change your perspective on what these scholarships are intended to do for kids.
Yeah.
Well, he
And
has a pen and an
Sorry,
opinion, but
that's
he
one of
doesn't
my
have.
rants. I'm
No, you're good. You're
And
good.
no, it's valid.
He,
It's
he
valid.
has a pen and an opinion and a
Yeah.
platform, but he doesn't necessarily have
And
all the facts.
I
And
just
the ones that he does have, one second, are it's dirty. I want to show you real quick. I have the screen up here, and he says about 70% of the Florida kids getting voucher money through the state had never been educated in a public school in the state,
yeah, that's the
comma,
quote I read earlier.
yeah. And then goes on to quote that vouchers are a contributing factor, like to what degree, like 0.001%, doesn't matter, doesn't say, not specific. So it's something you can't really refute. Like breathing oxygen's a contributing factor. Like, okay, great. Like
in
but the article that he references, the link over to the article that he references is a WUSF.org article. Thank you,
Oh,
USF, for coming in
USF. Come on.
strong. And it breaks down the 70% voucher quote that he has, and it goes back and references the 2021-2022 school year. 12% of the state's education budget went to private school vouchers. This school year, the amount nearly doubled to 23%, and it mingles and blends in basically let's take the stats and statistics and facts and skew them and show them in whatever way just fits the story we want to tell you, basically. So to make the statement over here, well, 70% of the students have never even been in a public school. Like, no, you're right. A lot of them are in private schools. Like, there's so many other things that are not what he's pointing out, which are theme parks and other things.
Right.
He's just blending it all together, saying what he wants to say.
Yeah, that's another issue here is he's conflating all the different scholarships
Yes.
into one thing. A private
Yes.
school, someone who's using the private school scholarship, probably almost all of their funds are going directly to the private school. They are not out there buying theme park tickets and trampolines because they can't. Their funds all went to the private school.
They went for tuition and fees at the private school.
Mm-hmm.
So he's conflating them all together and pulling the statistics as though they apply to everything and conflating that with home education and blaming the home education and private schools for the collapse of the public school. Like, it's all just mashed in together and it makes no sense.
And so you can see, if you don't respond as a homeschool community to this, to your legislators, to the Palm Beach Post, write your own article and try to get it published. That's his information is what the legislators are going to pick up and think that's how the scholarship works, because most of them don't dig into each one of these issues that deeply.
Can I bring in some other interesting things about, like, here's another article that he just absolutely ignores this idea. New Florida law provides school grants for AI in classrooms. Yes. Right after they voted to pass 1403, they passed this one, which dumped $800,000 in AI subscriptions in the state for the classrooms for children, because maybe, I don't know, I don't want to say why or speculate, but, you know, they need the help, I guess, or it's useful or fun, but, like, come on, man.
Yeah, I wanted to address really quick because we had a couple of comments. The thing that
Sure,
is
we got a lot of
really
comments.
lacking in this article are the things that these parents are saying in our comments. So Melody says, I was unable to get a legit out-school math course reimbursed through Step Up because the math teacher has a chemical engineering degree instead of a math degree. There is no blank check with this PEP scholarship.
Great
No
point.
one is talking about all the legitimate things parents are using the funds for or trying to use them for and getting denied. I have seen so many parents who are trying to get tutors approved, who are trying out school classes or various other types of classes similar to those, online curriculums, all kinds of things that are just without debate educational, that they can't get approved because there are little nuances in the requirements that they can't get passed. None of that is in this article. In fact, he uses the term blank check, like just cavalierly with no facts or data behind that at all. And then Kim Hannon says something is wrong with our society if we are questioning the legitimacy of the importance of children getting exercise and being outside. And then she said, this is just one more reason why people submitting the Tell Your Story videos is so important. Yes, please we need a counterbalance to articles like this. We need it. And then she also made the point, a lot of those kids are going to theme parks as a field trip with the public schools or the private schools. Yes, they are.
Yes,
I attended public and private growing up, and we did that both. All my schools
100%.
took those field trips. And I've seen the argument made that, well, but parents still have to pay for that. Some of it, you might have to pay a little bit toward it, but the school is still organizing these as an educational experience. So you can't argue then that is not a valid educational expense.
Absolutely.
Philip Valerie Hughes asked, I'm getting into this conversation a bit late, but does the article happen to mention if he had any recent interviews with any Florida homeschool families? I would guess no.
No.
He is getting all of his information, it seems,
from his own mind.
These interviews he did with the Florida Policy Institute. He looked at their report.
He didn't do an interview.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't even know that he did interviews. So I'm guessing he gathered his information from other false articles that are all over the internet, because there's tons of them that present things in this way. And we've been arguing against those since last year when they first started emerging, claiming that PEP funds were being spent on these ridiculous things when most PEP parents, that was like from August and we didn't even have our funds yet. So we've been combating this since last year. But we need help. We really do. We need parents to reach out to these. If you see an article like this, reach out to the reporter or to the editor above that reporter and just say, hey, here are all the false things in this article. Can I submit a counter article, or can you ask him to at least correct this? And also to your legislators, it wouldn't be a bad idea to contact them and just be like, look, all of this false information is being put out. I just want to make sure that you know that this is not actually happening. I'm concerned that my rights are going to be restricted because of this false narrative. Like, this conversation needs to be happening.
Imagine for a moment if we had 100, man, I would dare to say if we had 1,000 videos of legitimate home education experiences, some with the UA scholarship, some with PEP scholarship, some without scholarship, and we just had a litany of videos one could get lost in and see. Then these tiny little articles printed here or there as opinions would be small blips of somebody just being butthurt that, well, I didn't get that when I was a kid or in school, or, why this and not that. It's like, well, I don't know, educate yourself on all the nuances and differences and then come back with a better opinion. But imagine if that was just a small little blip, because the rest of the information that we have, and we have partners, we have connections, we have other advocacy groups that are willing to share the content that we can put up. So we could do that. We can spread that. We can make that a possibility, but we can't do it alone. I could only put out so many videos of our family. People don't want to hear about my family. They want to hear a multiplicity and a multifaceted approach, from classical to we made our own, we game school, we do this, we do that. Like, mix it up.
We need all the examples.
Yes.
And it's the same reason that even though I'm a writer and I really, really, really want to contact all of these news outlets and ask if they can print my counter article, it looks like I have an agenda because of my involvement with AGF. I need other parents. I need you guys to help.
So do the legislators.
You could help them write an article.
I can help you.
Yes,
I'm happy. I'm happy to read and review something and give you feedback or help you with data if you need examples and things that we are, connected with. But I cannot be the one to write them because it just isn't going to be as effective as if you write them. That's just.
However, I was planning to announce this today too. I would like to expand the Tell Your Story project to include written stories, not just video stories, for all of those families who aren't as comfortable being on camera in a video form. Write it. You're okay to bring us your essay. Like,
we can share them on our blog.
Write it up. Take some pictures here or there of your kids doing their thing and put it in there, drop it in there, write it up, write until your heart's content. We'll edit it and we'll post yours as a guest article on our own blog. And that can also be shared out.
We would love to have those.
Absolutely,
and
100%.
I just want to reiterate the point that you do not have to be on a scholarship to submit your story. We want parents who are and who aren't. Correct. Because
our main goal is to protect home education rights.
I want to make sure we reiterate, though, that these articles, these issues affect all home education parents, whether you are using a scholarship or not, because the public perception of home education as a whole is what is being attacked here, not just the so-called vouchers. If you look at the tone of the article and the way he addresses home education as though it's essentially robbing something from the public schools.
Yes.
This is not
public school as the only legitimate source of education.
It is not just about the scholarship. So even if you're not using any of the funds, please also send us your story. Please reach out to the Palm Beach post if you live in Palm Beach. Reach out to your legislators. If you see an article like this in your own city or county, reach out to them, because it's not just going to impact people who are using scholarships. It's going to impact all of the parent-directed education.
Absolutely. 100%.
And somebody needs to include in their articles that if all of this should only be limited to core courses, why did the legislature fund a gaming lab at one of the middle schools?
Yeah.
Oh, that was so frustrating. Yeah. They literally passed that like the same day that they denied our amendment to the HB 1403 restriction. So frustrating.
Yeah, let me hear.
It's motivation.
Yeah, right. Give me a second. And I will pull that article up. Yeah. Esports Lab. Here we go. Yep. So this was the most frustrating aspect was this was last year, and the article printed. The article went, why is it so tiny though? Oh, I don't know when I did that. Zoom back in. Okay. The article went live. Where is it at? Hello, article. Why is it? I don't see. This is the first ever esports lab. I have the page up, but I don't see the actual. How far do I have to scroll down to get the article to pop up? Oh, well. I'll do it another time, I suppose. Yeah, here we go. WCTV has one right here. Yeah. Leon County Middle School. Yeah. Esports Lab. There it is right there. It's brilliant. Let's do that. So in this went, the original article actually went live just before we were in the Senate arguing about this. And
yeah, there's the date, February 28th, 2024.
Yeah, wouldn't you know they were making some of the same wonderful arguments that homeschool parents make about broadening horizons and giving them options and pursuing their passions and all that kind of stuff. But, it just doesn't fit the public school model. They can do it, but they can't say one thing and talk about how bad it is and then turn around and do that exact same thing.
Yeah, they were also
That's
passing all kinds
absolutely
of
disingenuous.
They were also passing some things about like music and art programs. Like all of these discussions were happening while we were in there saying, please don't prevent parents from using the scholarship funds on
Right.
extracurriculars.
Yes. Yeah.
And we were getting shut down because
Mm-hmm.
we were talking about home education and not public school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the big arguments was it was cheaper to rent it. Why couldn't you just rent it? But then some lady pointed out that if you rent that a violin over the period of 4 years,
4 years,
you're paying more than if you just bought the violin outright.
That's right.
So their arguments don't make sense. And that's because they don't understand. They just get sound bites,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to get reelected. And so a lot of the money comes from teachers' unions. And so they're going to soundbite the incorrect information for the donors to their campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really sad. I mean, there are a lot of them that stand up against that, but they need constituents in their area that they cover to speak out so that they have the clout and they can say, my constituents say blah, 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 to counter those.
Yeah, that's a good point. They can fall back on you as the constituents of their district. If they have enough parents who reach out to them, they have a platform then to fall back on when they're making these arguments. One of the other things they were arguing about last year was, well, just take it at the public schools then. Like, why don't you just go take your music classes or your sports or whatever? If you can't afford it at home, we don't need the scholarship to be buying you private gyms in your homes. Just go take it at the public school. Well, any of you who have been following our live stream the last few weeks know that we're battling for public schools to even let some of these kids play sports in the public school.
That's correct.
So there are just, it's ignorance. And that may seem harsh to say that the legislators are ignorant, but they can't be informed on every issue. And if the only voices they are hearing are these negative ones in the media and they're not hearing ours, then they just assume that it's true. So.
Yeah. And we want to provide them with some information.
County, they probably have 10,000 homeschoolers or PEP students registered in Palm Beach County. We can help them get those numbers. And if one person calls and said, I'm speaking for the 5,000 registered homeschoolers in your district, and this is what we as parents want or what we're doing, it brings some reality to the subject.
Absolutely. Without the information to balance conversation, it's very difficult. It becomes one-sided. And that's what we're trying to prevent, is this conversation from being one-sided where someone with some man with an opinion who can sniff his armpits and decide that there's not enough stink in here, I need to put a stinky opinion out, can do that, and that's the only thing anyone hears. We want to be able to have accurate information, accurate stories of parents, legitimate uses of funds, demonstration of the educational benefit, demonstration of home education without the funds. We can do it without the funds. We don't need them. It's not a need. It provides some wonderful opportunities, and it really does expand the opportunities.
Yeah, but so many of us were doing this before the scholarship existed, and we'll continue doing it even if the scholarship gets taken away. So those stories are important too. But it's not an opportunity.
Scholarship allows us the enrichment for parents that are single income families that the kids otherwise would not be able to do. And
I am so grateful because our kids are on PEP, and I have been able to buy so many cool things that I would not have been able to afford. Science lab kits, all kinds of stuff.
Musical instruments.
Yeah, musical instruments, art supplies,
Yes.
tons and tons of books.
Mhm.
I splurged on curriculum that I wouldn't have bought otherwise, just to make my own life easier, because I like to piece stuff together, but it's helpful to have some stuff that's pre-made that I can pull from. Like it really has enhanced. But the truth is that the majority of parents who are using PEP are not in it for like a money grab to buy Disney passes and all of that. They are homeschooling because they believe it's the best option for their children, and they're grateful for the funds, and they're using them legitimately, and we need those stories shown.
Absolutely. Well, look, it's been an hour. That hour flew by. I don't think there was a wasted second in that hour. I want to say thank you to everyone who watches our podcast. We really do appreciate you. There are usually a handful of people whenever we go live, but the views beyond that are in the multiple thousands after we go live and the videos sit there. And some of you share them, and thank you for sharing them, because it increases the reach and it increases the effectiveness that we have. And you play a huge part. You play a huge part in our effectiveness, and we appreciate you sharing the information that we put together and the ideas that we put out. We thank you for your participation in supporting us financially as well. There's still a need for that. So if you do know people who haven't yet, encourage them to hop on. It's very simple. There's any number of tiers that they can choose from very comfortable to, if they have a business that they want some recognition for on the recognition wall. Or if they have a larger company and they just love homeschoolers, but need a tax write-off, we have a 501c3 nonprofit that they can donate to and help support the work and the advocacy work that we do. It can be very beneficial to them and to us. So help us spread and share the information. Thank you for your support, and thank you for tuning in every Monday or when we do the live streams. Without anything else, Brenda, you get last word always. Is there anything you would like to say before we wrap up?
I just want to reiterate how important it is that parents share this video, that we can reach more parents and build more community, especially in grassroots lobbying efforts, because we, Jason mostly now, can't reach all of the people we need to, and so we need your help.
Yes, absolutely. Crystal?
Oh, that's what I was going to say too. Just please share this video. I mean, share it to the Palm Beach Post if you want to, but share this video because we need more parents to be aware of what's happening with the narrative around home education. The tendency really does seem to be to keep to ourselves because we don't want to stir up trouble. But the opposite view is not being quiet, right? Like they're not being quiet about their opinions. And if we do not balance the narrative, the fight to keep our rights is only going to get more difficult. So.
And if that man would dare to come on our podcast and talk about his views, we would love to have him on and have a conversation. So yeah. Let that be known too if you share this with them. All right. Well, we're going to wrap things up. I want to say a special thank you to our top sponsors, Arete and Fisher Precious Metals. We thank you for being with us. We thank every one of the families again, as well as we wrap things up. And you guys enjoy your last Monday of January 2025.